Hi, it's Heather Smith here, and on today's Accounting Apps podcast episode, I'm joined by UK Chartered Management Accountant Jonathan Gaunt. Jonathan is the co-founder of FD Works, co-founder of Xavier Analytics, and is currently working on a project called Socket. In this episode, he's on a challenge to increase his LinkedIn presence, and I talked to him about his LinkedIn profile. We went on to talk about the importance of quality data, and we talked about how he has founded, built, grew and exited an app which was Xavier Analytics. We thrash out his business philosophies and Jonathan shares some of the books that he enjoys. And we talk about the current projects that he's working on, which is Socket. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hello, Jonathan, and welcome to the Accounting Apps podcast. I'm very excited to have you here. And for our listeners, Jonathan Gaunt, director at FD Works, co-founder at Xavier Analytics, who is working with ambitious business owners to achieve their goals and grow their businesses, is joining me on the Accounting Apps podcast, my time Valentine's Day evening. What an appropriate time! What an appropriate time for you to join me, Jonathan. How are you?
I'm really good, thanks, Heather. Really good. No, I'm a bit of a morning person, so the time works perfect for me. So the house is quiet, and I get some of my best work done in the mornings. So I love it.
Love it. I get my best work done in the mornings. I wish I could just it was okay for me just to work seven days a week from probably 6 a.m. to midday, and then that was it. But everyone would tell me off if I did that. So I've known you for over a decade now, Jonathan, but for our listeners who've not known you, who is Jonathan Gaunt?
Who's Jonathan? Good question. So if I look at it from a career perspective, I'm a chartered management accountant. I've worked in industry. But from a kind of a person, I guess I'm quite a restless person. I'm curious. I'm cheeky. I like to have fun. And I guess that's perhaps then the bridge of why I needed to get out of industry. I worked for a large bank. I never really saw the effect of what I was doing in finance. And a couple of friends asked me the question of, could I help? My initial thought was no, I didn't know the answer to it. But then I saw this massive opportunity of big businesses and small businesses operating exactly the same way. And so there was this instant excitement of being able to have a conversation with someone, see them act on it, and then see the kind of like the magic, the results of it. And that really got me kind of excited. And then I realized that I had to get out of this kind of uncontrollable corporate world and really kind of take control of life myself. And that was really the start of FD Works back in 2012. And then from there, it's almost that bit of being master of your own destiny. So I like to take control of things. And running your own business has given me that control to kind of experiment and explore different ideas. So
very
who
exciting.
am I? A cheeky chappy.
It's interesting the word you used to describe yourself as restless, because I often say that when I met Rod Drury in the early days, he was so frustrated, and I'm a person who gets restless or frustrated. So it's interesting. It does seem to be a part of the DNA of successful entrepreneurs.
I think what's interesting there, Heather, as well, is finding your kind of tribe. So finding those people who kind of get you. And I'm very fortunate that the people around me kind of get me. So Rich and James, from a technology point of view, we work very, very well together. So bit of background, Rich and James were both co-founders of Xavier. We worked together. So we worked together at Xavier, we worked together at Dext, and then we've kind of left to go again. So there's history there, but also then within FD Works, Rachel, who I worked with Rachel back in 2010 at Lloyd's Banking Group, and we've stuck together and we work well together. So I can think something, and I almost know what other team members are thinking. And for me, that is just like the magic of going to work and working with adults. So I don't want to work with children. I want to work with adults. I want to give my kind of best work every day when I rock up. And I'm lucky that I can do that.
Yeah, it is nice when you find those people that you can work with, and wherever they are and however that works. I was just thinking today, my web designer, who's obviously just a small part but a very important part. She's been there for like a decade, and again, I know what she's thinking, and how she'll deal with things. So, Jonathan, you're currently on a mission to gain more followers and connections on LinkedIn. Why is that, and what are your current strategies for that?
So I think it's probably, they call it spray and pray, don't they? Where they just, like, if you throw enough stuff at the wall, some of it will stick, Heather. So I think that's kind of part of the strategy. No, I guess part of it is you kind of reflect on things, and Christmas is always a good time to reflect on things because you get a bit of quiet time. And it's almost one of those things that I try to, I'm going to say work LinkedIn. I try to use LinkedIn in 2023 and do what I thought was the right way of almost like, well, you write serious content. It's a professional platform. You need to write things in a certain way. And I guess I was always disappointed that I'd put an awful lot of effort into the content I was writing, and then you perhaps get 2 or 3 likes on things. And then suddenly it kind of dawned on me of like, well, I've not really enjoyed that. So why don't I almost kind of pretend that I'm talking to myself, that I'm kind of journaling in a certain way, and I'll just be myself, throw things out there which make me laugh in doing it. And then the prompt was, there's a list of the top 100 accountants, and you look at it and you see that the top 3 people have got enough people by themselves to fill Wembley Stadium. And it's just complete madness. And then you start to think to yourself, well, personal challenge, can do more than I've got. So that was it. And then there was a post from Jerry Williams where she put, just be yourself. And for me, that was like the bit of, right, I'm going to be myself. And that's really started. And I don't know what I've created now.
Fantastic. I love it. I love it. So if people are listening in, can I encourage you to jump over and connect with Jonathan, so he gets a few more connections on LinkedIn. Can I be cheeky and give you some LinkedIn advice?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Well, of course, you're here with me today with pink hair, and that was going to be my first advice. So you've nailed that one. You've nailed that one. And hopefully this advice is useful for other people who are listening in. You have the opportunity to have 5 hashtags on the top of your profile. And currently you only have 3, which are finance, SME business, and entrepreneurship. And they're a bit wishy-washy.
Yeah.
The hashtags that to have, the hashtag that you should have is, and it's very weird, and you can just go straight to my profile and copy it off my profile, is accounting and accountants. It's the most popular hashtag. It's the most followed hashtag in our industry, with like 4 million followers. And by having that, it means more people are following you because you're assigned with that hashtag. So 5 hashtags in your top profile. And then when you post something, use the hashtags. Always put the hashtags in where they're relevant, because then it gets, this is the person who talks about that. So then you've got 4 million people watching you talking about that stuff. I know that sounds silly, but that's something where to go. And then the final thing I'll say is you have a link which is www.fd-works.co.uk. You can go in and edit it and say something like, click here for business advice, or click here for your first 15-minute call with us, or something like that, like a call to action. You can actually write text in there and the link will go through to something. Okay.
Sure.
You're doing that right now.
Love it. Yeah, no, I'll do that straight afterwards. And I think this for me is almost like the bit of everyone is spending so much time doom scrolling on social media. And for me, that was almost like the catalyst of actually I'm wasting my time if I don't engage. And so it's little things like that were just kind of like chipping away at me. And I've probably been doing it, just over a month now. And I've had some fun. Like literally, I've had some fun. I've had some great conversations with people. And it's just by putting yourself out there, it's being yourself. And so that for me would be like a massive recommendation to everyone listening. Don't just scroll, interact with things, because you'll get to meet some really interesting people and you'll have some interesting conversations. I'm also an introvert. And so again, the ability to be able to hide behind something helps me incredibly. So for me, this is almost like there's a bit of there's something in between me having a conversation with, so that makes me feel safe to be myself. And so, yeah, recommend people to have a play.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you've done a really good job of putting up lots of images, but you've used artificially generated images of yourself, but also some weird images of yourself in various locations. And it does look, the other great thing that you've done, which I do, is you're like, I'm going somewhere, does anyone want to meet up? And yeah. As people know, I travel the world, and I always go, okay, I'm going to Atlanta, I'm just going to put a picture up there. Does anyone want to meet up? And you know what? I get people whom I kind of just distantly know contact me all the time. And like I had all different opportunities have come. I've been invited to go and speak in New York because I put something up there that I'm going, and this sort of person who vaguely knew me, now we're really, really good friends. So I do encourage people to put it up and say, like, what's the worst that can happen from it?
Yeah, so. No. I would say I've started to do little things like that. And so where are we now? Wednesday, I've already met 3 people this week. Fabulous. That I wouldn't naturally have kind of met. And that's just by asking.
Yeah.
And I think that's, if I roll back to when I started, part of the reason why I started and had the confidence is that I met someone who I couldn't believe what they were asking for, and people were saying yes to. But in my heart of hearts, I didn't believe that they were able to follow through with it. So in my mind, I thought, well, if I ask and I know that I'm good at something, why won't I succeed?
Yeah.
But it's that bit of asking. And we all too often say we don't want to ask for help, advice, just being cheeky, because the worst that someone's going to say is no. And as long as you've got a little bit of Teflon on you that it's not going to impact you, you'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the only thing for me personally, I don't put anything identifying about my children up there. But I kind of make it known that I have children, but I don't, that they're young adults, but I don't, there's no way you can connect. And if I do need to go personal, it's Chester the Border Collie. So it's always referencing. So that, that's completely fine. But moving on from LinkedIn, I have a question that I'm really interested to hear your perspective of. What is it like being a management accountant in the UK?
It's good. It's a good question. I guess there's lots of different perspectives to what is a management accountant. So the reason I became a management accountant is because I worked in industry, and when I trained, there felt as though there was quite a big divide between, you either went into practice, and if you went into practice, the route was either ACA or ACCA, or if you went into industry, then you did SEMA. And I guess the reason I was quite attracted to going into industry is because I get more excited about where things are kind of going. And at the time, there felt as though there was a big divide between compliance and that forward thinking piece. So I was incredibly fortunate that I had some brilliant people who took me under their wing and pushed me completely out of my comfort zone into my adventure zone. And so I got to do a lot of people watching, which was incredible, and learning about what you should do and also what you shouldn't do. I got to learn an awful lot about kind of how do you manage people, or how do not manage, how do you lead people, and how can you kind of get the best out of people. But I just love that bit of trying to dive into the numbers, understand the story, and then do the so what. And how do you turn it into a story that you can have with non-finance people? And so I absolutely loved being a management accountant. And so that was then the kind of the part of back in 2012. Why is there this disconnect between compliance and the forward thinking bit? And so I guess in some respects, I had that head start of I knew the power of finance. I knew the impact that you could have by using numbers to tell a story and telling that story in a way that people got. And it's simple things about when you talk about growth, you don't talk about we're going to put an extra 100,000 on this year. You talk about we're going to get an extra 20 customers who look like this. And then straight away, when you start to have those conversations with people, they know what 20 customers looks like. They know how to get 20 customers. And then you start to see businesses kind of fly and get it. And that for me is like, how do we find the clunk moment in all that we do?
Absolutely. My heart is in management accounting, and I sometimes regret going down the ACCA route rather than the CIMA route. And the way that you've told that story, in that we're gaining 20 new customers rather than that dollar value, which is sometimes those dollar values as a KPI are difficult for the business owners to actually understand. But they know a client and they can go, okay, 20, that's almost 2 a month. I can do that. It's a lot more achievable and seeable and touchable.
Yeah, you talk about which route to go down, and I think this is part of it. I always see professional qualifications as getting you to the party, and so which is the right one to do? I'm kind of open, and I think what's interesting in the UK is that a lot of the training providers have switched away from CIMA. And what I've been told is because it is now multiple choice, it's deemed to be a little bit harder. And so what they've seen is that lots of people have then reverted back to ACA or ACCA. So the training provider that we use only do one of each course per annum. So therefore, if you're doing CIMA and you miss that intake, you've effectively got to wait 12 months to do it again. Whereas if you do ACA or ACCA, there's one every quarter. So we're kind of questioning whether we push people or we encourage people to go down the CIMA route, or whether we actually look at ACA or ACCA.
Goodness, that seems a really bizarre strategy. For them, especially in a world where we need as many accountants as we can funneling through the process. And it does seem like, it's a golden opportunity as we implement technology. It's a golden opportunity for management accountants. So that's totally bamboozles me. But anyhow, I understand you worked with a dragon from Dragon's Den. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So this is around 2012, and needing to get a bit of kind of excitement. One of my friends who ran a creative agency said, "Do you want to meet? Do you want to meet this guy off the TV?" And it literally was that bit. If do you want to meet this guy off the TV, and it's like, yeah, okay. So on a trip to London, I ended up on sitting on Richard Farleigh's sofa. So Richard was always classed as the nice dragon, and I got to know him quite well. And the role that I was playing is Richard had an awful lot of people who would approach him with a, "I've got a great idea," and it would either be, "I've got a great idea, but I can't tell you, and can you give me some money?" Or there would be a little bit more context behind it. And so my role was almost to kind of sift through all of the information, pull together a view as to whether this was something which was investable or not. And the first few, with my accounting hat on, it was almost like, oh, there's a lot of risk on this one, you can't do this. And Richard looked me in the eyes and he said, "Mate, I don't need anyone to tell me why I can't invest in this. What I need, though, is I need someone who can look at this and tell me what I need to do different in order to invest in that."
Ooh.
And it's looking at something from a completely different perspective. And you don't need to know anything about it, but again, you need to be curious. And so for me, this was one of the pivotal points in my career, because suddenly it allowed me to be a creative accountant and to start looking at things and saying, well, why can't you do this? Well, the cost of making something is so expensive. So what can we do to make it cheaper? Can we do things in a slightly different way? And when you look at it in that way, there are so many opportunities. There are so many things that you can do different. And that is almost like, I would say that one conversation, the last 12 years have been shaped based on that simple conversation. So everything now is, what can you do different in order to make this a success?
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that with our audience. I hope that they too have a bit of an aha moment over that. I have a saying, which I don't know where I picked it up from, but it was measure life not in dollars, but in conversations. And that's one of the conversations that we need to have as accountants. My theme this year is storytelling, and a solution that can help you tell the story of a business so that the business owners understand it and are positioned to make an informed decision is Fathom. Leading advisors engage their clients with meaningful conversations using Fathom. Fathom simplifies complex financial data to help clients understand the insights that matter. Beautiful, dynamic visuals let you instantly interact with financial results. Drill down into key metrics, explore the impact of business decisions, and create actionable plans to improve future performance. Fathom is great for presentations and meeting with clients. Invite your own team members and your clients into Fathom. Fathom beautifully integrates reporting, analysis, consolidations, and three-way cash flow forecasting. It's always live with your cloud accounting data. And the new features keep coming. Recent releases include divisional budgeting, custom terminology, 5-year forecasts, and a Google Sheet integration. Try Fathom free with their 14-day trial, plus a free one-on-one session with their globally award-winning customer team. Find out if Fathom is a beautiful fit for you. So, how did your journey lead you to becoming the director at FD Works?
So I guess it's that bit of, I felt as though I had no control of my career in a corporate world. What I mean by that, you're almost waiting for people to move on in order for roles to open. You work really hard, and then you get to the end of the year and it's like, we've got to fit a normal distribution, therefore you're not getting a pay rise this year. Or can you do this? And what's in it for me? There's not a lot we can do. Our hands are tied. And so I started to feel a little bit frustrated. I also then felt frustrated with recruiters because I'd go to recruiters and I had this financial services label on me. So it's almost like, what do you want to do? It's time to move out of financial services. Right, okay, we've got that. And then a week later, you get a phone call. I've got a great job for you in financial services. And it's like, you're not listening, are you? So it was really that whole kind of bit of how can I take control of my own career? And that's really where I kind of felt as though I could see zero coming over the horizon. I could see this kind of world of, well, if I take my skill set that I've developed in industry and start to apply it to small businesses, let's go with that. And I was also quite fortunate that we'd lived in the Middle East for 3 years. And so whilst living out there, we'd been able to kind of save, and we were a little bit ahead in terms of paying the mortgage, etc., that I had a bit of space to breathe. And so I did a deal with my wife that if I could cover the mortgage, I was allowed to leave. And so that was really kind of the permission that I needed to kind of explore it. And things took off quite quickly. I then did a job share. So I played a little bit of poker with work to kind of say that I wanted a bit more flexibility. They fell for that. So that gave me then almost the catalyst to get going. And that was really the no looking back from there. It's the whole bit of we've got all of the tools. There's plenty of businesses out there that need our help. It's just let's just get going and roll with it.
We are lucky in England and Australia that we don't have these oppressive university debts. We do have university debts, but they're not as oppressive as happens in other countries. I do find interesting amongst my family in the UK, very few of them start businesses. So it's always exciting to sort of, there's a few people obviously in the accounting community who do actually go and start a business. But I know very few lay people who do. So yeah. What does the F and the D stand for in F&D Works?
So initially I thought I was going to be a finance director. So it's kind of the bit of, when I first started, it was as much the bit of, the idea was, well, accounting records will be so good that I'll literally be able to go in there and kind of advise and bring to life the numbers. And what I realized very, very quickly is that the quality of the data was so poor that I couldn't be a finance director. And I tried to have conversations with the people in there kind of doing the bookkeeping or the finance team. And it's almost like people just didn't get it. So it was almost like that bit of, right, what do? I either give up because this is an impossible task, or I take control of the entire work. So it's almost that bit of the FD then morphed into, well, I need to build finance departments. So originally it was finance director, but now I see it more as that finance department, because you can only tell a story with good quality data. And that's the whole kind of bit of, in order to do it, I feel as though we've had to build our own teams. And this perhaps alludes to some challenges of people moving from industry into kind of practice. I don't think they always get the fact that when I worked in industry, I had one customer. Mm. And so you never really have to worry about time. You never have to worry about how long things take. So I'd work on forecasting models for like months and they would be perfect. Whereas you can't use that mentality now when you work with small businesses. It's almost like, come in, I've got 4 hours. What can I do in 4 hours? And it's not even, you've got to cut corners, but it's got to be directionally correct. And I think this is where we found the best way of being able to do this is developing people internally within our practice or within our business, because we can show them how to approach things. We can get them to think about things in a slightly different kind of perspective. But you've got to be like, in our roles, we've got to be lean. We've got to be so efficient how we kind of play. And it's not about perfection anymore. And I think that's a challenge for a lot of accountants. They want perfection, but actually there's not enough value in that perfection. Therefore, I think directionally correct is good enough.
Yeah. Love it. I don't love it. There was all that inaccurate data there, but it sounds like the same journey that I kind of went through. And the shock of why is everyone working with this inaccurate data? Do they not? And what's going on? But I imagine that this led you on another journey to co-founding Xavier Analytics. So can you share with us that journey and what it actually does for our listeners, who I'm sure a lot of people will know about it, but just give us an overview of what it actually does.
Okay, so Xavier is now Dex Precision, and we kind of stumbled on it. The backstory is that one of our clients were software engineers, so they were building technology for other businesses, and so every quarter we would sit down and we would go through their numbers, and at the end of it I would say pretty much the same words: I wish I could code. And then one quarterly meeting, Rich called me out on it. He goes, "So what would you code?" And it's like, "You listening?" And I kind of went through a number of things that I've always had a data side of what I do. And so it's almost this bit of, can I get information out of the API? Can I get it into a spreadsheet? And if I can do it in a spreadsheet, I can apply some logic to it. So we started off by trying to build a forecasting tool. We built a forecasting tool. We put some numbers through it and it didn't work. And the reason it didn't work was data quality. And so we went through this kind of process of starting to tidy things up. So why have we got 3 contacts, all very similar? We know they're the same person, but we've used a capital H for Heather, we've used a lowercase h, and then we've got an H Smith in there, but we know that it's all the same contact. So we went through this kind of exercise of tidying things up. And then before we knew it, we realized that actually there was this whole new kind of space. And then we started to kind of, once we did the first thing of multi-coded contacts, duplicates, etc., you then start to go, well, okay, where next? Well, we're always calculation corporation tax. Well, okay, let's put a calculation in place for that. We're doing VAT returns in a particular way. Well, okay, let's create a way of doing that. And we created all of these different activities or workflows, but then we were found that people were getting a little bit lost with them. And that's really then where flows were introduced, because what we were trying to do there is let's introduce an order. So you do this first, and then this, and then that. And yeah, we kind of found a bit of a blue space in the accounting tech stack that no one else was kind of doing. And yeah, had the time of our life building and then working with Dext.
Fantastic. So in June 2020, now I'm saying it wrong, aren't I? Xavier?
This is it. I think if you
can tell me how to say it. I just can't remember.
So I don't think we've ever agreed on it. And I think if you ask me on a particular day, I may say something that's different. But I kind of say Xavier.
Xavier. I'm going to have to write that down. Xavier. I spelt it completely different so I could understand it. So in June 2020, Xavier was acquired by Dex. Then you joined Dex, which was previously Receipt Bank, but you joined Dex and became the Innovation Director at Dex Labs, which sounds like a very exciting role. What was that like for you?
It was good. So it was pretty exciting. Of almost you've built something, and then you get superpowers. So suddenly, then you've got more investment. You've got different people doing roles that you weren't great at, and I think that's the bit of the whole go-to-market. We're ideas people. We know what the problems are. We know how to solve the problems, but actually we're not great at the kind of the selling piece or the go-to-market. So that was incredible. From a personal level, it's moving back into a more corporate environment wasn't the most exciting thing for me because I'm a little bit
Restless.
chaotic, restless. So it's almost that bit of there was a focus there of coming in, and almost it made me reflect on previous careers. I learned an awful lot. We delivered on what we needed to. And then I think that's the point where you get to realize that actually there's better people out there than you for certain tasks. And that's the bit where you kind of question, particularly as you get older, what you're the very best at. And I think I like the innovation. And I think where we were, I couldn't innovate at the speed that I wanted to innovate at. And that's not how a bigger business kind of operates. So I think for me, it's that bit of the more and more time I spent there, the more I realized that actually I wasn't the best person to do the job that Dex needed at that point in time.
Yeah, that's a shame because you'd think innovation director you would have that opportunity to be able to go fast. But I do understand big companies are like big ships, and it takes a lot to move them. And you want to be the innovation director of the windsurfer who has a bit of money behind them. So reflecting back on that journey from co-founding to selling, what advice would you have given your younger self?
It's kind of an interesting one because hindsight's a wonderful thing. There's certain things that so when we sold to Dext, 2020 was the start of COVID. There was a degree of uncertainty. We were probably going to go out and do our first funding round, and I got to see other businesses that we work with that there was real kind of like challenge around the ability to raise money. And so it's very flattering when someone kind of approaches you and says, we want to buy your business, that we jump to the chance. Would I encourage myself to keep it a little bit longer? Maybe. I think that's part of the excitement now of why we've decided to go again, because actually we think that we can build something of a size, we can solve some real problems ourselves. And so I think hold on might be the advice that I would give myself. Be a little bit more confident in your own ability. Mm-hmm. And part of it is like, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. So you've decided to go again, and you're now the co-founder of Socket Digital, working with other experienced founders on the next innovation for accountants. Share with us what Socket Digital does, please.
Okay, so this is myself, Rich, and James. So we were all co-founders in kind of Xavier, and we worked incredibly well together. And we want to get back to that bit of being innovative and solving problems that accountants had. So we spent the first part of 2023 almost exploring ideas at FD Works. So we'd take things that didn't quite work at FD Works and kind of play around with ideas. One of those was around the whole kind of piece around resourcing of we're doing lots of different work for different kind of clients. How do we look at the talents of the people within the team? How do we kind of move things around and give people the work at the right time? And so we started to kind of build out. We were having some success internally around what we were building and shaping. But to get that data, we needed to be able to access it from the proposal system. So fundamentally, the proposal drives everything within the practice. It tells you what to do, but more importantly, it tells you about the size of what you need to do. So if you're going to do a VAT return where you're getting paid £100 will take you a lot longer than if you're getting £500 for it. And what we felt is that there was lots of kind of gaps in terms of how people were sizing the work they were doing. So we started to look at where we could get feeds from proposal tools. And very, very quickly, we realized that actually there was big bits of data that was missing from those. And we then started kind of asking questions of, can we do everything we want to with proposal data, with the proposals? And actually, we realized there was big gaps. It wasn't great around the reporting, the ability to be able to apply kind of price changes across everything, the recovery of software fees was kind of poor, that we started to kind of look at it, and there was lots of opportunity we felt. And also, if we took control of the proposals, it would then give us so much more flexibility downstream. And so the middle part of last year, we then looked at it and said, do you know what? We need to take a bit more control of proposals. We think there's still an opportunity of, you've got some brilliant players out there already, but we still think there's space for a tool that can do things in a slightly different way. And that's the start of Socket. So we've been building, we've been using it at FD Works for the last 4 or 5 months. The team are loving it. And we've now started to kind of share it with the wider world. And what we're trying to do there is there's some brilliant software called Superhuman. And what they've done is they curated a wait list. And in that wait list, they asked a few very simple questions. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to find those people that they can solve the problem for in the first instance. And so that's really what we're doing, is we're asking 2 questions. What practice management tool are you using? And what proposal software are you using? And then we're kind of doing a deeper dive of trying to understand, well, what works in their current world, but what doesn't. And then that's the bit where we can dive in and start to look at, well, okay, what's the innovation that we can bring to this? So we've got quite a few ideas, but what we don't want to do is just build it for FD Works. We want to build it for the wider world. And so that's the kind of the process we're going through at the moment of working with a handful of kind of early adopters and looking at what are all of the practice that they do alongside that we can then bring into the tool.
Very exciting that you've got your own kind of practice sitting there at the side that you can test all of this on. So for our listeners listening in, you can visit usesocket.com and go and click on join the wait list if you are interested. And it sounds like if you join the wait list, you will go through that process of giving that further information, and they can make an assessment of whether you're a suitable client to try this solution out that Jonathan's building. So
I think there's something else. There's something else in that as well, though, Heather. Of we've all got ideas, and that for me is like the bit that I would encourage of be a little bit curious, and it's almost like explore your way of doing something, because this is what we did. I never set out when I started the business that I was going to get into software. but we found our way of doing something. And even a process where you're using lots of spreadsheets behind it will help you to move faster. It will help you to get that kind of consistency. And you never know, it might be a tool, but it's that bit of just try and find that simple, logical, repeatable way of doing things. So that's the title of a really good book by someone called Marianne Page, who used to work at McDonald's. And for me, that's the way that I do a lot of things. Is almost like, well, how can I get to that bit of it being simple? You take out all the complexity, but then repeatable. And you never know, there might be people listening who are at Xerocon in a couple of years with brilliant tools, and I'd love to kind of hear their stories.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So that was a book. I'll put it in the show notes. Marian Age sounds like someone who worked or is in leadership at McDonald's. And you've also mentioned that you like another book, which is Who Not How: The Formula to Achieve Bigger Goals Through Accelerating Teamwork by Dan Sullivan. So What is it that you like about that book, and why do you recommend that book?
So I guess part of it is, you almost don't need to read the book, because it's that bit. It's
that Dan Sullivan.
Yeah. It literally kind of comes down to, you don't have to do everything yourself. And so it's then that bit where you start to, the kind of the direction that sometimes you want to go in, but all too often we just then roll our sleeves up and we become an expert in something. So the who not how is almost then that bit of, don't worry about how to do it. Just find the person to do it for you, and then have confidence around it. And there's a really good kind of little bit that you need to kind of add to that, is almost like, what's the definition of done? So what is it you're expecting back? But then if you give people kind of the space to then go and operate, you don't need to do everything yourself. And it's almost then that bit of, well, I'm not going to, I've said, when can I have this back? Heather said next Friday, therefore I've got to trust. But then on next Friday, I've got back what I need and I've moved forward, but I've moved forward using someone else. And I think as entrepreneurs, we need to be leaning on brilliant people around us. And that's why I love that book, because it gave me permission to not have to do everything myself.
Excellent. Thank you very much for sharing with that with us. And I'm sure that you have inspired many people who are listening, who are either in the building stage or contemplating building, that they can actually take the step out there and make some technology potentially in our space, or even just sort of go and grow your own practice or your own firm. So thank you so much, Jonathan, for joining me on the Accounting Apps podcast. It has been so interesting after many, many years getting to know you a bit better. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience?
No, just I think part of it is be brave, but like experiment. And I'll finish with a stoic thing: control the controllable. So if there's stuff that's out of control, ignore it. Don't worry about it. There's a small space in between where you try and influence something, but influence, you can give it a couple of goes, but then always bring it back to the controllable. So for me, it's that bit of focus on what you're good at, focus on what you can control, and have fun.
Yeah, goodness, you've got so much great insight. I imagine everyone's going to now connect with you on LinkedIn so they can follow all of this goodness and inspirational commentary that you have. So thank you so much, Jonathan, for joining us. I've already mentioned to people to connect with Jonathan Gaunt on LinkedIn. Is there any other places that people should connect with you, or if they want to reach out?
No, I'm not great with technology. So as in social media technology. So LinkedIn is as well as it gets. Facebook, I think I've got 3 followers. And Instagram I've tried, but I use that to follow other people. So yeah, it's all about LinkedIn for me.
All about LinkedIn. Fabulous. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, Jonathan. Really appreciated having you on the Accounting Apps podcast.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you so much. Keep up to date with the modern accounting technology landscape by subscribing to the Accounting Apps podcast, the Accounting Apps newsletter, and join the conversations happening in the Accounting Apps Mastermind community. I'm your host, Heather Smith, and I'm pretty easy to find on all social media platforms. I look forward to connecting with you.